you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join Doctors Joanne and Aaron as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
In this episode of Create Meaning in Medicine, we are going to be talking about pacing. And you might think, what do you mean about pacing? And listen up. This is going to be a very important episode. We have been talking about setting our goals, envisioning our future. We even talked about love and hope. We're going to be talking more about momentum and motivation. And sometimes there's this little thing called pace that can get in our way. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking more about it. So I'm here with my super co-host, Dr. Erin Hurley, and I'm going to be asking her all about pacing. So, Erin, why is it important to have this awareness about pacing, not just in yourself, but for those around you?
First of all, Joanne, I want to share that this thought about pacing came up yesterday in a virtual training that both Joanne and I attended with Brenda Mershard. And it was, you have those light bulb moments in a training. You're like, oh my gosh, I love the way that he shared this information. And I just thought this is so powerful, especially for women in medicine, especially for leaders. And he framed pacing around performance. And so as a woman physician, especially if you're a leader, maybe you lead your family, and do you sometimes look around and go like, why can't they just do this thing? I can do it. Why can't they? And you're looking at someone's performance and maybe thinking that they're failing at their performance. And the thought of behind the pacing, when we're aware, what's your pace? Are you a sprinter? Do you go in spurts where you run fast and then you take a break? Are you more methodical and you plod along at the same pace with all the things you do? How is your pace the same or different from those in your family, the people you work with? And this was so powerful because we can use it in any setting. I'm super fast paced. I think fast. I often speak fast when I'm not paying attention to speaking more slowly. I make decisions very quickly. And oftentimes I expect those around me to be the same. And if I'm not aware that some people might need to think about a question overnight, or they might need a week or more days to think about it, to come back to something after we've had a meeting about it. And if I don't honor and respect that, or I'm not even aware that there's different paces, I might be getting frustrated and upset and thinking like they are failing me, when in reality, I'm just not aware that there's different paces that people run at, think at, and implement. And without that awareness, I'm not going to be as good as I can be, again, whether it's in interacting with a patient, interacting with my medical team, interacting with my colleagues, or even interacting with my partner or my children.
This is so interesting, Erin. And what comes to mind in thinking about myself and then also a lot of the women in medicine that I coach is that because we have ideas, we have the creativity, we are very productive, and we're programmed that way as physicians often. But then there are times then we're trying to do something else, and we have this pre-programmed pace that we believe that we need to be at all times. And then whatever that new thing is might not match that previous pace. And then we get frustrated. We want to give up. We believe that we're doing something wrong. And that was one of the things that came up. I don't know if that also sparks a thought for you and the women that you've coached and what you hear them in this topic about pacing.
Well, and even if you are only around people who function at your same pace, right? So if you are a sprinter on the track team and you never hang out with the people who are the long distance runners, that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to know. And you're going to be like, what's wrong with everybody else? And I remember having a conversation with my medical assistant when I worked at a very large organization. And before we were paired up as physician and MA, she would bounce between, kind of floating between different departments in this large multi-specialty clinic. And I remember her saying she was just bored out of her gourd when she was working in some of the specialty clinics like surgery or the internal medicine clinic, because the pace was so slow. And she was used to the pediatric pace. And in pediatrics, it's a very fast paced clinic. You're toggling, you're racing around, lots of illness and things that are changing. And if you're used to working in a different environment, again, you may feel more comfortable working in that slower paced environment that meets your standard pace, and it's uncomfortable to go fast, and vice versa. So that awareness of what's your normal pace, and then recognizing, is that pace appropriate for who I'm interacting right now with? Is it in the right context for what's the setting? So maybe I had to be fast paced at work as a general pediatrician. And when I shifted into the specialty of child abuse medicine, it was extremely slow paced. It might take 2 to 4 hours to get through an evaluation, not 10 to 15 minutes. And so my pace, I needed to be aware of what's the context that I'm doing this pace and picking the right one for the person in the setting. So if you don't have that awareness, I would encourage you to get curious about, what is my pace? What's my MA's pace? How about my nurse? How about the setting? Do I work in a specialty? Do I work in the hospital? Am I in the ICU? So what is your setting that you're working in? And how does your pace match? Or if you're feeling like, oh, I'm really struggling with working in this environment, like one of my clients, and I just don't think that she's found the right match for her skill set. And if the pace, if she's putting herself into work where it's fast paced, fast decision making, and she digs in and goes deep to make sure she's not missing things and is very methodical, I feel like maybe she just needs to find the right medical specialty that's a great fit for her. Kind of like the story about, what is it? If you watch a fish try to climb a tree, it's not going to be very successful, but you put that fish in the water and they swim. And so can we look at our own pace, natural pace? What can we expect from ourselves? And then get in an environment that we can do a better job, or maybe that it's not so much work. Does that make sense to anybody besides me, Joanne?
That's interesting. What I'm thinking of is, even though I am, like I always say, I'm high energy, my brain goes fast, my field, and I love how you talked about the context and the setting, my field as a psychiatrist is slower paced. And I love it. I've been doing it for 20 some years, so I know how to handle that. And I love that I can offer that pace and time for my patients, because I know that a lot of times other fields don't have that luxury of time. But what I was thinking of was, when I have medical students, I like to ask them what rotations they've done already, right? Like in that second, third, fourth year, we rotate in all the specialties. And if they've done surgery, if they've done emergency medicine, if they've done even internal medicine, I said, okay, we're going to have to undo some of that fast paced interviewing, interrupting, asking very direct questions, and let's get a little bit more paused, more open-ended. Let's get into our empathy. And then I love teaching how they can implement some of that slower pace into a faster setting to give a little bit more of that quality time to the patients. That's a little side note. But again, when we're thinking about pacing and how is it important for us as women in medicine, these are the details to think about even as early as medical school. And that's actually the question I want to ask you, Erin. Why is thinking about this concept of pacing so important for us as women in medicine and as leaders?
As I was sharing with, it's important to have awareness, because if you only understand one speed, and that's, fifth gear with your foot on the pedal and you're going, 80 miles an hour at all times, as a leader, you're going to miss, when are those times I need to be going really slowly and diligently. Maybe it's implementing a new system where I talk about go slow to go fast, where it's pausing to make sure everyone on the team, the ones who need to contemplate and the ones who are fast thinkers, or if you are, for me, I have an answer right away once the question is asked, and I have forced myself as a leader, as a coach, to go last because I want everyone else to have an opportunity. I don't want to interrupt that just because my pace is fast. I want to honor the people with the different speeds. And as a leader, we need to recognize that. And even I know a tool that was very helpful with me when I shifted from general pediatrics to the specialty medicine, and the pace shifted. I was really struggling with, I feel like I don't belong here. And a few months after I was hired, they did a DISC assessment at a staff retreat. And I realized in the DISC assessment, I'm not an expert at it, but all I remember is there was about 3 of us on one side of the DISC assessment, and we were the movers and the shakers and the fast speed people. And the entire rest of the organization was on the opposite end of the spectrum. And it was so helpful for me, I became a leader pretty quickly after I was hired, to understand the perspective of the medical director who was on the opposite side of me, and slower and more methodical. And actually together, I helped her speed up her speed of getting through things. And she helped me slow down to make sure I was addressing all of those things. And it helped give some balance. So oftentimes, not surrounding yourself with only people with your same speed, but looking specifically for a variety can make you a better leader, so that you are not getting into analysis paralysis by going too slow or going so fast you're leaving everybody else behind.
That is so interesting. The power of awareness and clarity, and being able to take a step back, zoom out, and look at the big picture. And that broadens your insight of how you're contributing and how the people around you can complement you, and vice versa. It's so important. And what came up is also one of the things that we learned yesterday in this conference that we were at with Brendan Bouchard, that he talked about the difference between personality versus preferences, and how it's so automatic for us to talk about these things as part of our identity. And that's okay. Like Erin and I were both saying that we're in this a little bit more on the higher speed, and that it doesn't need to be something that's fixed. It's our default, it's our preference. And the message here that I'm hearing from Erin is have awareness so that you can maximize that tool and complement someone else, or pivot and adjust so that you can match the setting and the context in a way that's best for you and whatever it is that you want to accomplish. This is so helpful. Thank you, Erin.
And I want to also give an example of how this can affect you at home, because it may be that you are in that fast pace because you don't have a choice because of the work you do. And yet at home, if you bring that fast pace with you as the default, that may not serve you well if you have a spouse or a partner, or for your kids. And I was sharing with Joanne, she's met my daughter before. My daughter in some ways is similar, but in some ways is very different from me. And I needed to realize that I would oftentimes be juggling many things at once, be toggling quickly between activities. I was so used to it. I'd been doing it for decades in my career as a pediatrician. And that's not her way of doing things. She's very methodical. And so her goals as a senior in high school, she's like, I'm going to get my honors diploma. And then after that, after high school's done, then I'm going to learn how to drive. And after that, then I'm going to get my first job. And after that, then I'm going to go for the next job. And so very methodical, very planned out, very different than my style. And yet there's not, one way is not right and the other wrong. And so as a parent, I know because of my working as a physician, because I was a leader in medicine, it really fueled me to go faster and faster and faster. And from my daughter's perspective, there were times all she wanted me to do was sit down next to her and do nothing else. And at times it was almost like painful and made my skin crawl to just sit with her. I remember during the pandemic, her favorite music artist, Billie Eilish, had a concert, and we had scheduled to watch it, me and my daughter and her boyfriend, to watch it at our house. And I'm busy, like, does somebody want a sandwich? Who needs a drink? Who needs that? And later on, she shared with me, like, she just wanted me to sit down, not do things. My love language is acts of service. So when I'm doing things for people, that is the way I show them love. She's a quality time person. She wanted me to just plant my bottom on this couch next to her and watch the show. And I'm so grateful that she was able to communicate that with me so I could learn that there are some things that I've been hardwired with my personality, but also with the work that I chose to do, that then has a lot of fallout for my kids and my husband as well. And can we honor that and say, okay, how can I do better and shift gears when I need to, when going from home to work and vice versa?
That is so sweet. Thank you for sharing that about your daughter. I can totally see her. I can almost hear her voice saying that. Thank you. And you've shared some tools through those examples that you're sharing. What else? What are some specific things that we can do as women in medicine to help us with this awareness and using PACE as a tool?
Well, following in Joanne's footsteps, because she's always so good at creating these frameworks, I came up with 4 C's that we can keep in mind when we are considering our PACE. So often in women in medicine, the first thing Joanne and I hear is they are exhausted and overwhelmed. And so the first C is create bandwidth. It's really hard to even think about other people when you have zero bandwidth and you're depleted. And there have been several prior podcast episodes where I've shared how to get more done with less time and energy, research-based hacks and strategies that you can implement to free up extra time and energy in your day. So if you haven't listened to those, maybe we'll have them put some links in the show notes. But that's what can you do to create bandwidth? So maybe that's delegating. Maybe that's taking something off your plate, saying no to more things, setting boundaries. But what do you need to create the bandwidth to then be able to even think about what other people's paces are instead of just having that ability to look at what's right in front of you? The second C is communication. And communication is so important. And yet, if you're going lightning speed and racing around, it's going to be really hard to communicate clearly what you want done. And if you've ever read Brené Brown, she talks about paint done. And so if I'm asking you to do something and it's like an oil painting with all these layers and a certain size and certain colors, then I need to give you all those details. But if I say, I need a picture of a person and you come up with a stick figure, I didn't give you enough details. I didn't paint done because my done wasn't the same done as what you heard. So taking time to slow down and communicate and make sure what you said is what's heard on the opposite end, and being open to the feedback. If you're not giving clear instructions, how can you create clarity? And I had a great example of this on a coaching call this week where I was talking to a practice owner, and she talked about something that one of her staff had created. It was a Google spreadsheet. And she was talking about it was so well done. It was listing out all of the details of the referring people and all of this stuff. And so when I was talking to her about it, I was able to say, you really clearly communicated to the staff member what you needed. They delivered. And then once they delivered that, you actually gave them even more input to say, you know what would make this great tool even better? If we add this one more thing on there. And the staff member, because they'd gotten clear communication, they recognized the power of this great tool that they had created. And they could also take feedback to say, we can take it up a notch even more. the communication that started with asking for what you wanted with enough detail that the receiving person needed to give you what you want is so powerful versus, again, unclear communication. Then you're frustrated because that had happened in that office too, where there was communication and it wasn't clear enough for them to know how to run with it. And so I love seeing that growth and development as we talk about the importance of communication. The third one is clarity. And I'm sure you've heard Joanne and I talk about, you need clarity to know what your pace is, what your staff's pace is, what your family's pace is. And then being intentional now that you know, oh, when I'm at home, this is the best pace. When I'm at this person, this is the best pace. And pausing to get that clarity first allows you to bring the intention that you need in order to have the best match, and even communicating with them, using that other C to communicate. Well, if you haven't noticed, I'm a fast-paced person and I recognize that's not the same for you. What do you think if we tried this method that might meet both of our needs? It doesn't have to be an either or. And the final C is course correction. So how many of you have tried a new strategy and then just kept doing it over and over again, and then never stopped to look back and say, is this working? And so course correction is so important, but that means you implement something new. You try some of these strategies, like this is working terribly. Try something new. Try one of the other C's, but pause to revisit and say, is this getting me the results I want? And if not, what can I do? What can I pivot in order to get closer and closer to that thing that I'm clear that I want? And so for me, that's, checking with my daughter, listening to her and saying, hey, I'm trying to take this into consideration. Am I doing any better than I was before? And then being open to hearing what that is and saying, oh, let me try this method and see if it's a better match.
Erin, I have so many notes just listening to you. And I love how we can take a topic that we learned at a personal development conference and then really think about it, broaden it, and bring it back to why is it important for us as women in medicine, because we're so accomplished and yet we don't always know these distinctions of what can make us even better. So this is very powerful and helpful. Thank you. And there's so many things that stood out we give this message so often, and I hope that you as the listener, you're catching the drift of the importance about awareness in everything. When we know better, we do better. So understanding these concepts and understanding kind of what's your preference and what's the preference of those around you, and depending on the setting, how do you need to shift and pivot. And love the 4 C's. I love a framework of create bandwidth, which does not need to mean to do more. It's quite the opposite. It's really creating the boundary to protect the time for what you really want to do. Communication, clearly and specific. Clarity, not just of what you want, but the pace that you want, depending on what it is that you're focusing on. And then course correction, to be more flexible, to pivot. It's all good. So I hope that you all benefited from this episode as much as I have. Erin, what's one extra detail to add to what you've already shared that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Our listener will have heard Joanne and I talking over and over about the power of getting outside input. And for me, that was getting my coach at age 50, 20 years into my career. And we oftentimes have blind spots, and we don't want to admit that. We want to be perfect as a physician, and we don't want to admit that maybe we don't have all the answers. And I would really encourage you to look for people not that are going to be surrounding you with like yes men. Get into places where people might challenge you and might help you uncover your blind spots, because they're blind spots. You can't see them. And that's where other people, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, I would encourage you to go find those people that are going to help you uncover those blind spots. And that's going to make it easier for you to see the whole picture instead of just what you're limited to yourself.
Love that. Thank you so much. So if you're looking for more of this information, more support, more resources, please visit our website, createmeaninginmedicine.com. We are building a community. We want to have more resources for you. So please visit us there and stay tuned for our next episode.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.